Hi.
Hello, I'm Diane. Can I come in?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, come on in. When we spoke on the phone the last time, I wanted to ask you, but I totally forgot. Is that your first book?
Well, yeah, I was a war reporter for many years, and like I told you, I'd like to write about the backgrounds of people sentenced to death. And yes, it's gonna be my first book. Well, the first question I want to ask you, how was your relationship with your sister when you were children?
Oh, well, we had a very good relationship with my sister. Being a big brother 4 years apart, you can imagine. I was very protective at the time. No, nothing to complain about Tiffany. She was a nice little girl, very helpful, very attentive. She excelled at school, and besides that, we had a lot of fun together.
And your parents had no particular problems with her?
No, like I told you, no, they couldn't blame her for anything. Tiffany was a model child, which was not the case with me. I can tell you they had a lot more worries.
But did they realize that Tiffany has psychological problems? When we spoke on the phone the first time, you told me that she had attempted suicide when she was 14.
You know, you don't always feel good when you're a teenager.
Yeah, but you will admit that stabbing yourself in the stomach the way she did is not trivial. Was she attracted to violence?
I didn't really understand why she did this, but love can make you do something really crazy sometimes. And at the time, her boyfriend committed suicide, and she couldn't bear it because she felt quite responsible for that in a way. And I guess she wanted to do the same, simple as that.
But don't you think that from that moment your parents should have suspected that Tiffany was suffering from a mental disorder? It's particularly violent to try to end up your life this way.
When you are desperate to the point to end up your life, I think you can cross the line and do something that crazy.
Did your sister's behavior change? Did she show any other signs of violence?
No, she's not a violent person. She's someone who has always paid a close attention to herself. She always asked me to take her out to go for shopping, to get some clothes, some makeup. I mean, she was just gorgeous. Like you. Well, I mean, not the same way, but...
But now, talking about you, I can imagine how much difficult it is to live with this tragedy day after day. How did you learn what happened?
That day I was at my parents' for dinner. Tiffany was supposed to join us with her little girl. I remember my mother was sitting at the table while my father was in the kitchen preparing food and making jokes. Then the phone rang. Someone asked me on the phone if I was Mr. Tremblay. I said yes, well, that I was his son. And then, in a formal tone, the policeman on the phone told me that a drama happened at my sister's house and that her husband and my niece had been found dead.
I'm sure you were in shock. What did you tell your parents?
First, I was voiceless. I took a big deep breath before talking. And when I hung up, my father asked me who was on the phone and what happened. I tried to find the right words, but the shock was so terrible that my father passed out. Then my mother got into the kitchen, totally and completely panicked when she saw her husband lying on the ground. When I told my mother what happened, I felt like she was 10 years older. We were devastated. We realized that it won't be possible to go back to a normal life after that.
Your sister told the police that a hooded man had entered the house with a dagger, that he stabbed her husband several times and he attacked her by stabbing her once, then he left. So she crawled to the first floor where she found a little girl with a short slit in her room. Then she called the police. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's what she told me when I first saw her at the hospital.
And did you believe this version? At no time did you tell yourself that the culprit could be your sister?
From the moment she was charged, I started to have some suspicions, but today I'm sure she's innocent.
However, everything accused Stephanie, and the police never found any trace of another person. They noticed that at that time, your brother-in-law and your sister had very serious money problem. Could be a reason for Tiffany to commit the irreparable by killing a family. What do you think?
You know, after 12 years that my sister has been incarcerated, to be honest, that crossed my mind. But as crazy as it seems, I do believe that she's innocent and that she didn't commit the crime.
Sometimes we choose to believe what we'd rather not accept.
I know my sister and I know the truth.
Do you?
If you do interview me, please don't try to put words in my mouth.
Do you like dancing, Tom?
What? No, you can put me on a horse, but on the dance floor, forget about that. I don't know how to dance.
So it was her idea 2 months after the tragedy to go dancing in a club. Didn't you think it was a bit soon?
Oh, well, everybody reacts differently, and you gotta go on and leap forward, I guess.
12 years of prison, 3 on death row waiting execution. How did you live with this expectation? You, your parents, as well as your sister.
What do you think? As far as I'm concerned, for my parents, it is absolutely unbearable. But Tiffany is convinced that the law will recognize that he made a big mistake and that she will finally regain her freedom.
But even your lawyers give the impression of giving up. We must also remember that on the knife that killed your brother-in-law and your niece, the only fingerprints they found was those of Tiffany, and the so-called killer was never apprehended. That gives your sister little chance of getting out of it. If her execution should happen, are you ready for this?
You're never ready to see someone you love to go. But I'm sure those bastards are gonna pay back for that when she'll get out.
Not willing to see the reality and the signs of the truth are sometimes a good way to protect yourself.
What are you talking about? She's my little sister above all, and I love her. And I'm sure if you were in my place, you would feel exactly the same. Am I wrong? And I know she's not guilty. Now, concerning the fingerprints, Tiffany picked up the knife to take it out of the bedroom. I mean, anyone could have done the same, even you. Just imagine what it is to find your own little girl slaughtered to death.
I'm curious to know, Tom, are you for the death penalty?
No, I'm not for the death penalty. You see the situation in which I find myself? I lost my niece and my brother-in-law, and my sister is condemned to death. It is quite complicated to live with this hanging of eyes. All I want is that they find the murderer so he can be convicted for what he did, and that my sister can be free at least.
Is there anything that would change your mind about the death penalty? What about a terrorist? Or what about the actual killer in a family situation? Come on, Tom, revenge is sweet, so they say.
Now, if I was one of the killer, I would certainly and probably change my mind regarding the death penalty. And I would like this bastard to pay for what he did to my family, but at the same time, it won't make them coming back. We cannot wish someone's death, but let's say that some people deserve less to live. We can have a different opinion from the moment we are personally concerned. It is a very delicate subject, the death penalty. A hot topic that returns us to our own hatred with quite often a true hypocrisy. Let's see how the majority of the people are happy when a terrorist got killed by the police. If it's to put on trial and sentence to death, the same people will retract like if they were the ones to have to do the dirty job. And you? Are you for the death penalty?
I'm still wondering. Martin Luther King once says through violence may murder the hater, but you will not murder the hate. Just assuming that if everything ends up judging her and the date of the sentence falls, will you go see your sister one last time?
It is out of the fucking question. I don't want to see my sister die in front of my eyes. Anyway, I'm sure she'll make it out. Do you know how many people have been wrongly convicted since the death penalty has been in place? Since 1976, 144 people have been released after the lawyers fought to prove their innocence, which is 4% of the death row prisoners are innocent. I'm sure this is a miscarriage of justice and that my sister will be released.
4%, that's 96% guilty who have too often killed innocent people. People who could have peaceful lives and not cross paths with those killers. What do we do with those monsters? You told me that things are different when you are personally concerned. Excuse me for insisting again, but doesn't a desire of revenge take over?
That's what I'm wondering every day. Mostly when I put myself in the place of my brother-in-law's family, especially his sister who calls me from time to leave me messages of hate, hoping my sister will burn in hell. You know, I feel a big contradiction inside me, like in the Bible. It tells you on one hand about absolution, that you have to forgive because God forgives those who repent of these sins. And on the other hand, about the Italian's law, I quote, "The principle that a person has injured another person is to be penalized to a similar degree." For my part, I think it is useless for the person to be executed because, like I told you already, it won't return the victims.
I share the same opinion, Tom. Can I tell you a story, or more exactly part of my story?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
In the prison where your sister is, there was another detainee who killed 2 truckers the same day. The first trucker had refused him priority, so he followed him to a gas station. He shot 4 bullets. The victim died instantly, leaving behind him, a wife, and 3 children. The second was Asian. The guy killed him for no specific reason, just because he was a truck driver. It was my father. My mother-in-law called me around 2 a.m., and the world collapsed at that moment, and me with it. When they arrested the murderer, I wanted to see him die in the worst of suffering. I felt like I could kill him with my own hands. What hurt me the most was to see that he had no regret for what he did. When the date of his execution was announced, I was asked if I wanted to attend. At first, I was ready to see this scumbag die in front of my eyes. But after I retracted, I felt like if this bastard wouldn't have a word of remorse or excuse, it could have resonated in my head and in my soul for the rest of my life. When he was finally executed after 9 years, I had no satisfaction. Made me realize that my father was not going to come back. The punishment of this man had just stopped. Death had just freed him from his crime. Being so clingy to my hate over all those years didn't help me to fill the gaping hole of my pain. I'd be such a different person if nothing of this had happened. I'm floating down in uncharted waters.
More coffee?
No. I think it's time for confession, Tom. Last Monday, Tiffany told us that you killed your brother-in-law. We reopened the file. The crime lab put the murder weapon in pieces and found your DNA on the dagger handle.
I knew that day would come. I've been living with this terrible secret for 12 years. 12 long years that I wanted to go to the police to tell them what really happened on the night of the tragedy. This man was particularly violent with my sister. He was an alcoholic who even sexually abused my niece. The day she told me that, it was the same day I went to their house to beat up that little piece of shit. It was already too late, and on the top of it, my niece witnessed the scene. I killed her father in front of her. Then my sister asked me to leave, that she was going to convince her daughter to lie and to tell the police that he was the thief who did it. The next day she called me to meet in a bar, and that's where she told me that she killed her daughter. To protect me. You asked me previously if I was for the death penalty. Well, concerning my sister and I think that's the only way out.